Don't scroll, just stop for 10 seconds. This story starts with $3,000. But what happens next is far more powerful than money. Watch closely, and see how one woman turns every obstacle into a victory. The park was quiet that morning, wrapped in the soft gray fingers of dawn. The streets were almost empty, except for a few leaves rustling in the cold wind. She sat alone on a worn bench, her fingers tracing the edges of the bills in her hands, $3,000. It wasn't much in a city that measured success in millions. Not in a place where ambition was tested against skyscrapers and dreams were weighed by numbers. Yet, in her heart, this sum was monumental. It was a promise to herself, a spark that could ignite the path forward. She looked around, letting the silence of the park sink into her mind. Memories of doubters came unbidden. Friends who had laughed at her dreams, family who had warned her not to aim too high, strangers who had sneered at her ambition. They weren't her enemies. They were mirrors, reflecting every obstacle, every challenge she would have to face to reach her potential. Her phone buzzed. A single message. One voice of belief. That was enough. That one voice cut through the noise of doubt and fear, reminding her that even in a world full of naysayers, someone had faith in her. She took a deep breath, feeling the cold morning air fill her lungs, and tucked the money safely into her backpack. She whispered to herself, "I am not defined by what I lack. I am defined by what I do with what I have." Every step through the winding paths of the park felt deliberate, purposeful. Each shadow she passed, each leaf that skittered across the walkway, felt like a small test, a reminder that growth would never come easy. By the time she reached the edge of the park, the first golden rays of the sun were breaking through the horizon. The city was waking, oblivious to the quiet revolution unfolding in one corner. She stepped into the streets not as someone hiding, but as a strategist, a dreamer, a doer. Small pause, space for dramatic effect. Weeks passed. She started small. Every day she built something, no matter how minor it seemed. A plan here, a phone call there, a conversation with someone who shared her vision. Slowly, she observed that every small victory reinforced her confidence, every minor mistake became a lesson. She learned to watch the city differently. The vendor at the corner wasn't just selling fruit, he was an opportunity to learn the rhythm of human interaction. Children laughing in the park weren't just noise, they were reminders of energy and possibility. Every small detail, every seemingly insignificant moment became a lesson in awareness, adaptability, and growth. Connections she had once neglected were now nurtured, not for immediate gain, but for mutual understanding and long-term collaboration. She realized that success wasn't about resources, it was about how creatively and persistently you use what you have. She still had only $3,000 to start, but now it wasn't a limitation. It was a symbol, a spark, not a cage. $3,000 sparked the fire, but I am the flame. Small pause, space for dramatic effect. The first real opportunity arrived unexpectedly. A freelance project, small at first, but it gave her a taste of her potential. She worked late nights, planned meticulously, and poured not just effort but thought into every decision. Gradually, her reputation grew. Clients returned, word of mouth spread, and her influence expanded quietly. Challenges didn't disappear. Bills needed paying. Mistakes happened. Criticism lingered. But she had learned the fundamental truth. Every challenge was a lesson, every failure a step toward mastery. She saw her wounds as weapons, her failures as fuel, and her persistence as a bridge toward victory. By the time the city had fully awakened each morning, she was already steps ahead. Her strategy was refined. Her vision, once fuzzy, was now sharply defined. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was shaping her reality. Small pause, space for dramatic effect. Months passed. Each day was another test of endurance, intelligence, and courage. Slowly but surely, the $3,000 she started with became insignificant compared to the value she created with her own mind, effort, and determination. She began mentoring others quietly, helping those who had once been like her, uncertain, overlooked, underestimated. Every lesson she shared reinforced her own growth. Every smile of encouragement returned to her tenfold in confidence and clarity. Then came the big moment. A call from a company that had noticed her work, offering a long-term partnership. Her heart raced. All the nights she had worked in silence, all the sacrifices she had made, were leading to this. She remembered every doubter, every sneer, every sleepless night. This wasn't just success. it was proof that her persistence, intelligence, and courage could transform even a modest beginning into something extraordinary. Standing at her window, overlooking the city skyline bathed in amber light, she whispered softly, "This is only the beginning. My wounds are my weapons, my courage my shield, and my vision the path forward." From $3,000 to endless possibilities, her journey had begun, and nothing would deter her from turning dreams into reality. Weeks turned into months, and the city's rhythm became her teacher. She had learned that ambition without discipline was like a boat without an oar. It drifted aimlessly, no matter how strong the wind of desire pushed. Every morning she woke early, planning her day meticulously, breaking tasks into tiny, manageable pieces. The $3,000, which had once felt like her entire world, now seemed like a seed, a spark that had started an internal fire. Every dollar had been spent thoughtfully. A small investment in materials, a book that expanded her knowledge, a bus ride that took her to a meeting that could change her path. Her mind was constantly alive, analyzing, adjusting, evolving. She observed people differently now. The city wasn't just buildings and streets, it was a network of stories, lessons, and opportunities. A vendor's smile at the corner wasn't just politeness, it was a lesson in human connection, in the power of kindness. Children playing in the park weren't just distractions, they were reminders that joy and curiosity were catalysts for creativity. With every interaction, she learned patience. She learned to listen before speaking, to observe before acting. Minor victories became significant milestones. A client's appreciation email, a new idea that worked, a problem solved without panic. Each small success was a brick in the foundation of her future. Mistakes, of course, still happened. But now she treated them differently. They were no longer failures, they were lessons dressed as challenges. She would pause, reflect, and ask herself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? And in each reflection, she found clarity. Small dramatic pause for video effect. Her network grew, not by aggressive networking or seeking favors, but by sincerity. She connected with people genuinely, not for gain, but for shared growth. Mentors appeared when she least expected them. They offered advice not because they owed her, but because they saw potential, a potential that she was gradually realizing in herself. She also learned the importance of self-discipline in everyday routines. She created a schedule that balanced work, learning, rest, and reflection. Every morning began with affirmations, breathing exercises, and visualization. "I am capable. I am resourceful. I am unstoppable," she would whisper, reinforcing the mindset that would carry her forward. Her financial decisions, though small at first, became strategic. She learned to evaluate risk, to anticipate consequences, and to focus on long-term impact rather than immediate gratification. The $3,000 had been a starting point, but her mind, her strategy, and her persistence were now the real assets. Pause, reflective space. Months passed, and slowly, small opportunities turned into bigger ones. A freelance project expanded into a contract. Recommendations led to referrals. Every effort, every late night, every setback and comeback added momentum. She realized that growth wasn't linear, it was compounded. Consistent effort multiplied over time, creating a trajectory that no external circumstance could easily alter. She also began documenting her journey. Journals, notes, sketches, and plans filled her apartment. They weren't just reminders, they were tools for analysis. Each setback was recorded, dissected, and used to build strategies for the future. She learned the value of intentional reflection. Without it, even victories could feel hollow. Her mindset became her compass. Challenges were no longer obstacles, they were teachers. Scarcity was no longer a limitation, it was a training ground for creativity and resilience. Every problem she faced became an opportunity to demonstrate her resourcefulness. Even when she encountered people who doubted her or dismissed her ideas, she no longer took it personally. Their skepticism wasn't a threat, it was a mirror showing what she might need to strengthen in herself. And she strengthened, quietly, persistently, daily. Small dramatic pause. One day, a new opportunity appeared, unexpected, yet perfect. A small business needed help launching a project, and she had the exact skills they lacked. She approached the task with precision, creativity, and courage. Every decision she made was intentional, every action measured. By the end of the project, she had not only delivered results but also earned respect, trust, and recognition. This was no longer just about money. This was about impact, credibility, and momentum. The lessons she had absorbed during these months were profound. Effort compounds when combined with consistency. Discipline transforms potential into results. Every setback is a disguised lesson. Real growth is holistic, mind, body, heart, and spirit aligned. She began to see her life differently. The $3,000, once her entire focus, had served its purpose. Its real value was in the discipline, strategy, and mindset it forced her to develop. Reflective pause, space for video. By now, her vision was clear. She could see the path ahead, the challenges that would arise, and the strategies she would employ. The city, which once felt intimidating, now seemed full of possibilities. Every corner held potential, every encounter could teach something new, and every decision mattered. Her journey was no longer just about surviving or earning, it was about building a life with intention, impact, and resilience. Every moment, every choice, every effort was aligned with her purpose. She understood now that resources are limited, but resourcefulness is infinite. $3,000 started the journey. My persistence, my clarity, and my courage will take it forward. Months of careful planning, relentless effort, and quiet persistence had begun to bear fruit. The small victories she had achieved, successful freelance projects, appreciative clients, and growing influence, were no longer isolated sparks. They were coalescing into a pattern, a trajectory that could not be ignored. She had become skilled not only in her craft but in understanding the rhythms of opportunity, human behavior, and the subtle art of timing. One morning, her phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. A company she had admired from afar, a company that represented everything she aspired to, was reaching out. They had noticed her work, not by flashy marketing or loud self-promotion, but by the consistency and integrity of her results. Her heart raced as she read the message. It was an invitation to discuss a long-term partnership, a contract that could provide stability, recognition, and resources far beyond what she had imagined when she first counted those $3,000 on a park bench. She paused, allowing herself a brief moment of reflection. The journey had been grueling. Nights spent working alone, doubts that gnawed at her confidence, and the relentless question of whether she was truly capable, it all came rushing back. And yet, every sleepless night, every calculated risk, and every failure that had once felt like a defeat had been a preparation for this very moment. With deliberate calm, she responded to the message. Each word she typed carried not only clarity but the quiet confidence of someone who had weathered storms, who had learned to see challenges not as obstacles but as stepping stones. Small dramatic pause for video effect. The partnership discussion was intense. She was asked to present her ideas, defend her strategies, and demonstrate how she could deliver value. She drew upon everything she had learned over the past months, the insights from every small project, the lessons embedded in every minor mistake, and the disciplined approach she had honed with $3,000 as her initial catalyst. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that she had not only impressed them but earned their trust. They were investing not just in her skills but in her character, her persistence, and her ability to transform ideas into results. Walking back through the city streets after the meeting, she allowed herself a moment to absorb the significance. The skyline no longer intimidated her. The busy streets, the honking cars, the endless crowds, they were not obstacles. They were witnesses to her growth, the canvas upon which she was painting her own story of transformation. She reflected on how far she had come from that solitary bench in the park, counting $3,000 and wondering if it would ever be enough. That money had been modest, but it had been sufficient to ignite the spark of possibility, forcing her to rely on intellect, courage, and creativity. Pause, space for reflection. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into the new partnership with meticulous care. The project was larger, the stakes higher, and the expectations immense. She had learned not to fear responsibility, but to embrace it as a proving ground for her abilities. Each day presented new challenges. Unexpected setbacks threatened timelines. Clients offered last-minute changes. Colleagues had differing opinions, but she approached each problem with calm, clarity, and a growing confidence in her capacity to adapt. She had developed a rhythm, a harmony between strategy, action, and reflection that allowed her to navigate complexity with grace. Her $3,000, which had once felt like a lifeline, now seemed like a symbolic talisman of resilience. It was no longer about the money, it had been a catalyst, a starting point that demanded resourcefulness and discipline. What mattered now was mindset, consistency, and execution. She began documenting her progress, her failures, and her insights. Every lesson became a reference point for future decisions. Every triumph reinforced the belief that persistence compounded over time, building momentum that was impossible to ignore. Small pause, space for video effect. Recognition began to follow. People who had dismissed her efforts months ago now sought her advice. Her reputation spread not through boastful self-promotion, but through consistent, visible results. Her influence expanded beyond projects to touch the lives of those who had been quietly struggling, just as she had been. She realized something profound. Success was no longer measured by money alone. It was measured by impact, resilience, and the ability to transform limitations into opportunities. The city, which had once felt overwhelming and indifferent, now seemed like a living network of potential, responding to her efforts, her awareness, and her careful navigation of opportunity. And yet, she remained humble. She knew this breakthrough was not the culmination, it was the threshold. A stepping stone toward greater achievements, broader influence, and deeper personal growth. The lessons she had learned in the shadows, the quiet mornings in the park, the sleepless nights of planning, the small victories, had prepared her for this. $3,000 started the journey. This breakthrough is proof that persistence, courage, and clarity can transform the smallest resources into extraordinary opportunities. Dramatic reflection. Pause. By the time evening fell, the city was bathed in gold. She stood by her window, reflecting on her journey. The skyline was no longer intimidating, it was inspiring. Every light, every street, every distant sound reminded her that she had created a path through uncertainty, doubt, and scarcity. She whispered to herself, "I have grown, I have persisted, I have learned, and this is just the beginning." Every challenge ahead is an opportunity, every setback a lesson, and every moment a chance to rise. From $3,000 to the brink of meaningful recognition, her journey had entered a new chapter. One built not on luck, but on deliberate action, insight, and unwavering resilience. The city had changed in subtle ways since she first counted $3,000 on that quiet park bench. And yet, it wasn't the city that had transformed, it was her. Every challenge she had faced, every moment of doubt she had endured, every sleepless night spent planning and learning had forged a new version of herself. She no longer measured her worth by money, recognition, or external approval. She measured it by growth, resilience, and the courage to act despite uncertainty. By now, she had developed a rhythm of life that balanced ambition with reflection, action with mindfulness. Every morning began with intention, affirmations, visualization, and breathing exercises. "I am capable, I am resourceful, I am unstoppable," she repeated quietly, but with full conviction. Each day, she approached tasks not as burdens but as opportunities to sharpen her skills and strengthen her mind. Her work had grown beyond small contracts and freelance projects. She was now leading initiatives that affected lives, influencing teams, and mentoring young individuals who reminded her of her own beginnings. She had become a quiet beacon of possibility, showing that even modest beginnings, guided by persistence and clarity, could lead to remarkable impact. Small dramatic pause for video effect. Financial success had followed, but it was never her ultimate goal. Her $3,000 had been a catalyst, but the real wealth lay in experience, knowledge, and the ability to adapt under pressure. She had learned that resources could be limited, but creativity, resilience, and strategy were infinite. One afternoon, while reviewing notes from her journals, she reflected on the journey. The struggles, the setbacks, the moments of doubt, all had been essential. Without them, she would not have developed the clarity, patience, and courage that now guided every decision. Her past wounds were now weapons, her fears had become fuel. She smiled at the thought that every obstacle she had faced was a teacher in disguise. Every challenge had forced her to think strategically, act deliberately, and trust her instincts. And with every lesson, she had grown, not just in skill, but in self-belief, empathy, and vision. Reflective pause, space for video effect. Her influence extended beyond her immediate projects. She had begun mentoring others, quietly offering guidance and insight to those who sought it. She encouraged them to see limitations as opportunities, to transform doubts into strategy, and to trust in the power of persistent effort. The ripple effect of her journey was spreading, silently, across the city. Her relationship with the city itself had transformed. She noticed small interactions, the way a vendor smiled, the rhythm of everyday life, the laughter of children, and saw them as markers of opportunity and connection. The city was no longer a backdrop, it was a partner in her journey, responsive to awareness, action, and purpose. Through all of this, she maintained a disciplined focus on personal growth. She read, reflected, and planned daily. She celebrated small victories, but also examined failures and missteps for lessons. The $3,000, once the center of her universe, now felt symbolic, a reminder of the power of initiative, strategy, and courage. Dramatic pause for video effect. Then came the ultimate realization. Transformation wasn't a destination. It was a continuous journey. Success wasn't a single achievement, it was a lifetime of intentional action, courage, and learning. She understood now that her story could inspire others not because she had started with $3,000, but because she had leveraged every challenge, every limitation, and every doubt into a path of growth and achievement. She whispered softly, looking at the skyline that shimmered in golden light. $3,000 was just the beginning. My wounds became my weapons, my courage my shield, and my vision the path forward. And now, I am creating a legacy. Her journey had become a testament to resilience, strategy, and unwavering determination. The city moved around her, busy and oblivious, yet she was aware of every detail, the pulse of life, the rhythm of possibility, the subtle lessons hidden in everyday moments. Every choice she made, every action she took, was deliberate and purposeful. Small reflective pause, cinematic space. By the time night fell, she felt a profound sense of peace. Not the complacent peace of someone who had achieved everything, but the calm clarity of someone who understood her purpose and embraced the journey. She had transformed. The girl who had once counted $3,000 in uncertainty was now a woman who created opportunities, inspired others, and built a life of intention, courage, and impact. And as she closed her journal, the city wrapped in darkness, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning. My journey will continue. My vision will grow, and my story will inspire." $3,000 was the spark, but I am the fire. Her story was no longer just about money. It was about courage, resilience, vision, and the transformative power of persistent effort. She had proven that limitations were temporary, challenges were lessons, and ambition, when paired with clarity and discipline, could shape a remarkable life. Outro for video. If this story inspired you, like, share, and subscribe. Follow Real Life USA stories for more heartfelt journeys of courage, persistence, and transformation. Remember, your limitations are not the end, they are the beginning of your story. The city had changed, but so had she. What began as a small spark of ambition with $3,000 had grown into a fire that illuminated her path. Every struggle, every doubt, every sleepless night had contributed to the woman she had become, disciplined, strategic, resilient, and visionary. She now understood that success was not a final destination but a continuous journey. Each project she took on, each client she guided, each life she touched became a building block in her growing legacy. She had learned to see beyond immediate gains. She now planned for sustainability, long-term impact, and meaningful change. Her mornings remained intentional. She started each day with reflection, affirmations, and strategic planning. "I am capable. I am resourceful. I am unstoppable," she repeated, but now with deeper understanding. Her words were no longer just motivation, they were guiding principles that shaped every action. Small dramatic pause for video effect. Her influence had expanded. She was no longer a solo dreamer struggling to find opportunities. She led teams, mentored aspiring individuals, and nurtured collaborations that created meaningful results. The $3,000 she had started with was now more than a memory, it was a symbol of courage, creativity, and the power of deliberate effort. She had also learned the value of reflection. Every week, she reviewed progress, setbacks, and insights. Journals and notes, once simple reminders of ideas, had become critical tools in shaping her strategy. She measured success not just by income or recognition, but by impact, growth, and the lives she influenced along the way. Her city, once intimidating and overwhelming, now felt alive with opportunity. Every interaction, every small exchange, became a lesson. The laughter of children, the rhythm of street vendors, even the challenges presented by unforeseen events, all of it contributed to a rich tapestry of experience and insight that guided her decisions. Reflective pause, space for video effect. Then came the moment she had quietly been preparing for, the ability to give back. She began offering workshops, mentorship sessions, and guidance for young dreamers who were where she once had been. She emphasized that resources are never the limit, mindset, persistence, and strategy are infinite. Her story became a living lesson. Those she guided began to see what she had realized herself, that obstacles are not barriers but teachers, scarcity is not a constraint but a call for creativity, and ambition is not arrogance but purpose guided by discipline. Through this, she discovered the joy of impact. Nothing could compare to seeing someone rise because she had shared her knowledge, her failures, and her strategies. It was the ultimate reward, the realization that her journey was larger than herself. Small dramatic pause, cinematic space. Financial stability followed, but it was no longer the central goal. She invested in projects that aligned with her vision, expanded initiatives that had social and personal value, and created systems that would sustain success beyond her own efforts. She had turned her $3,000 into a platform, leveraging every skill, insight, and lesson to create lasting influence. Her legacy was forming not in headlines or wealth, but in impact, resilience, and example. She had learned that real transformation is visible not in a single achievement but in sustained growth, consistent effort, and the ability to inspire others to do the same. She looked out over the skyline, the city lights twinkling like countless tiny sparks of possibility. She whispered softly, $3,000 was the spark. My courage, clarity, and persistence became the fire. And now, I am creating a legacy that will last. Her journey was no longer about proving herself. It was about creating a path others could follow, about showing that vision, discipline, and courage could turn even the smallest beginning into extraordinary impact. Final reflective pause for video. The world around her continued its chaotic rhythm, unaware of the quiet revolution she had begun. But she didn't need recognition. Her story, her growth, and her legacy were enough. Every challenge she had faced had been transformed into opportunity. Every doubt, into fuel. Every setback, into strategy. And as she closed her journal that night, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning. My wounds are my weapons, my courage my shield, and my vision my path forward. The fire I started with $3,000 will illuminate not just my path, but the path for countless others." Her story had become more than personal triumph, it had become a testament to the power of resilience, vision, and relentless effort. The journey that began with a modest sum had transformed into a legacy, proving that greatness starts small but can become infinite when nurtured with clarity, courage, and persistence. By now, she had learned a truth that most people never realize. Success was not a single moment, nor a single breakthrough. It was a continuum of effort, strategy, and persistence, compounded day after day. Her $3,000 had started as a spark, but her mind, vision, and courage had become the engine driving her forward. Opportunities began to multiply, not because the world had suddenly changed, but because she had changed. Every skill she had honed, every lesson she had absorbed, every connection she had nurtured, converged into an unstoppable momentum. She was no longer reacting to circumstances, she was creating them. Her mornings remained intentional rituals of preparation. She visualized her goals, planned her day meticulously, and reaffirmed her personal mantra. I am capable, I am resourceful, I am unstoppable. But now, these words carried weight beyond motivation, they were the guiding framework for every action she took. Every choice, every decision, every conversation was deliberate, measured, and aimed at expanding her influence and impact. Small dramatic pause, cinematic effect. She began taking on larger projects, ventures that demanded not just skill but strategic foresight. She collaborated with people who were as ambitious as she was, learning to delegate, lead, and inspire. Each success reinforced her understanding that growth multiplies when shared. Her perspective on money, resources, and risk evolved. She no longer measured success by a bank balance, but by the value created, the lessons learned, and the momentum built. Even minor setbacks were treated as data, information that guided smarter, bolder actions. The $3,000, once her entire foundation, had now become a symbol in her mind, a reminder that small beginnings, when met with courage and persistence, can ignite exponential growth. Reflective pause, space for video. Her reputation began to precede her. New opportunities arrived without effort. People sought her guidance, inspired by the transformation she had undergone. She realized that impact spreads silently but powerfully, influencing more lives than she could count. She started documenting her methods, strategies, and lessons. What had once been personal notes became a blueprint for others who aspired to transform their lives. Mentorship became a key part of her mission. She understood that true legacy is not measured in wealth alone, but in the lives lifted and inspired by one's journey. Even the city around her seemed different now. Where once she had felt intimidated, now she felt aligned with the flow of life. Every sound, every movement, every interaction was a reminder of opportunity waiting to be seized. Awareness had become her ally. Strategy had become her tool. Persistence had become her weapon. Small dramatic pause, cinematic space. She began exploring bigger visions, projects that could impact entire communities. Initiatives that taught skills, empowered individuals, and created lasting opportunities. She realized that ambition is not about what you can gain, but what you can give, create, and inspire. Her journey had transformed her entirely. The woman who once counted $3,000 in uncertainty was now a visionary leader, a strategist, and a mentor. Her momentum was unstoppable, not because she had avoided challenges, but because she had learned to convert challenges into leverage. And as she stood on the balcony one evening, overlooking the city alive with countless possibilities, she whispered softly. $3,000 was the spark. My vision, courage, and relentless effort became the fire. And this fire will keep growing, touching lives, creating opportunities, and building a legacy beyond my imagination. Her story had evolved. What started as survival, ambition, and cautious hope had now become purpose, impact, and unstoppable momentum. She had proven that even the smallest beginning, when combined with clarity, discipline, and relentless action, could reshape an entire life and inspire countless others. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Real Life USA Stories, like the video, thank you.